Welcome once again to Product One Technical Web Series. We've been going through a journey of plant design where we showcase how to do piping, and then the previous week we showcase how to do what you call structural frameworks using what we call advanced framework inside Creo Parametric. So what we did in creating our structural frameworks, we started inserting what we call fasteners. And these are the fasteners in question, and we did promise you that we will show a little bit more of what we call intelligent fasteners inside Creo Parametric. So let's get started. So what intelligent fasteners enable you to do inside Creo Parametric, they enable you to rapidly place common fasteners in an assembly. And the intelligent fastener capability can be accessed from the tools tab. So this is the tab here. So if you were to go on now and select this particular tab, it takes you to what we call the intelligence fastener group, which is this group over here. So what you now can do in this group is select your screws, which is also includes your bolts. You can also do a selection for your dowel pins. So you'll see how you get to do that. So the first thing to note here is this top plate here only has one hole, which is on the top right hand corner. However, the second plate, there's no holes at all. It's important to note because what we're going to do now will affect how that geometry or those components look like. So if I were to start by saying that I want to insert a fastener, maybe I've created a point where I want to insert that fastener. I can easily say, this is where I want my fastener, this is where I want my bolt head, and this is where I want my nut head. And then automatically it shows me my 2D preview. Now in that 2D preview, you can see that it's somehow countable. I get to select whether I want a washer or not. And I also get to select the size of my bolt, whether I want it to be M10, obviously to change the respective nut. And however, I can also choose from an array of standard that is available to me in this catalog. And I can also specify the depth or the length of my bolt, or I can just let the system decide the appropriate length for this arrangement. As you can see there, that represents the two plates. Now immediately when I say accept, not only do I have my nut, bolt, and washers, and a group which consists of all those components that I've just placed in here, what I also have, if I were to hide this, in fact, let's also hide the group. What I also have is the hole that is appropriate for that nut bolt arrangement. And if I showcase the display of that hole, it shows me that it's an M10 hole, and that is the drill diameter based on the standard that I chose. So the system does all of this for you. So you don't have to rely on points. You can utilize data mixes as well. The process is pretty much similar, whereby I select the face of the nut and the bolt. And what I can also do now is, while having that selected, I can say, let's remove the washer at the top, and then maybe let's make this one to be countable. And of course, I can modify the cutout of my countable and say this is the size that I want. And just like that, I'm having my nut with the countable cutout as well. And I cannot emphasize this enough. The plate itself now will have the hole inside to showcase the countable feature that we just created. Now moving on, what happens if I already have a hole? I don't have a data mixes or a data point. So what I can do is I can select the surface of the hole and where I want to place my nut, and I will just remove the counter ball for this particular one, and I'm going to say for this particular design, how about I select a certain length, and I'm going to do something unique. I'm going to let the system decide. Please note, it automatically shows the diameter of the hole, so I can say please select the right diameter. So this is if it does not pick it up automatically, then it will calculate the appropriate bolt size for that hole that you have. So I'm going to go ahead and insert a washer there, and this is what I have. So this is how you get to insert a bolt utilizing what we call data mixes, data points, and of course existing holes. What I can also do as well is I can insert any fasteners utilizing a couple of things. So for an example, I can say I want to insert a fastener, and these are going to be the two offset reference points, and I'm going to select the side in which I want my head to be, but instead of making this a nut and bolt arrangement, I'm going to make this like a screw feature. So based on this, I can now go and say maybe this is the screw head that I'm looking at, and I can get the software to determine for me in terms of what's the appropriate length in this. And I can also manipulate the thread depth in if I wanted to do that. Okay, so this is generally up to you. Now if I place now this particular washer, this is what I have. And what's nice about this, it also gives you a view in which where is that that screw is located, and you can modify where it's placed if you need to do that. And by doing that, you're now having nuts, bolts, any screw for this particular arrangement. So you are not limited to nuts, bolts, screws, and so forth. You can do something as fancy as this. So let's look at it in this context. If I were to hide that particular plate, bear in mind this is one what you call assembly or component, and this is another. So what I have here is that end cap plate that is basically on top of those two items. So just like I've done before, I'm going to go into my tools, and I'm going to say how about I assemble my screw, nuts, or whatever the case is, and I select the appropriate geometry, and automatically it will pick up in terms of what is the diameter. And if I'm happy with this, and the system will essentially pick the size for me, or I can manipulate the length of it. And immediately when I say okay, I get this feature here. I can say assemble this in all instances. So not just only pattern, but assemble it in all instances. So can you imagine if you've got a series of holes within your assembly? So here's what I'm also going to do. I'm going to hide this, and of course let's hide this geometry as well. By doing that, you can see that now there's a hole in here, but not only on that component. So we can also hide that. You get to see that for all those two components, there's now what we call holes that are relevant to this assembly of our screws. Now last but not least, how about you inserting something that is not a screw, that's not a bolt? So let's say how we assemble this, we're relying on what we call a dowel pin. The process is similar. You can say insert a dowel pin. So it wants me to select data makes use for my dowel pin and where the dowel pin is going to be located. And immediately I'm having now this dialog box here. And this is the arrangement of my dowel pin. And of course, I can choose from an array of standards of my dowel pin. Maybe this is what I want. And of course, I can manipulate a couple of things. I can manipulate the length or the depth of the dowel pin, or even the diameter. I'm just going to leave this as like this. And as you can see, it wants me to pattern because it wants to generate it onto the other side as well. So this is very ideal when you're having a situation where you're having a dowel pin that will determine maybe a lock point or align a certain geometry. So the process is essentially similar. Now, apart from dowel pins, you can also insert fasteners in areas such as this. Bear in mind, I'm having what you call an I-beam there. And as you can tell that the surface is slanted a bit. So how do you go about inserting fasteners on something like this? So I'm going to say, this is where I want my fastener. This is where I want my bolt head. And this is where I want my nut. Now, if you look there, that is not parallel. However, I can say, make the bottom surface to be parallel, just like that. So, or aligned in this instance. So now that I've got that, I can of course choose what is my bolt standard, and I can say determine the length for me. I can say put in maybe a different nut here for, let's say maybe this is the nut that we're going for. And of course I can say update the length that you selected, and as you can see, this is what I have. However, I can say, how about we change the nut that I have there and choose maybe this type of nut, and purely because of the slanted geometry that we have on the other component. Now, when I update the selection of that, this is what I have. And immediately when I say insert this, I'm going to say insert this in all the instances. And if you look there now, I'm having a washer that is shaped in a way that it aligns essentially with the surfaces. And that is the power of intelligent fasteners. So please do not forget to subscribe, hit us up on the comments, and like the video. Until next time, goodbye.